Have you ever actually looked at your keyboard and wondered what's going on here? Why are the letters arranged like this, in what feels like no clear order at all? Because when you stop and think about it, it doesn't really make sense. The alphabet has a clear sequence: A, B, C, D. Simple, predictable. But the keyboard completely ignores that. Letters are scattered across the board. Common ones are separated. Some keys feel oddly placed, and nothing about it looks optimized at first glance. Now here's the part that makes it more interesting. This isn't some random layout that only a few people use. This is the global standard. Every laptop, desktop, and almost every phone follows the same structure. Billions of people rely on it every single day. So you end up with this contradiction: a system that looks inefficient, being used everywhere, a layout that feels outdated, still dominating modern technology. And that raises the real question. If this keyboard layout looks so strange, and possibly even inefficient, why did it become the one the entire world agreed to use? To understand why the keyboard looks like this, you have to go back to a time before computers, before anything digital, and that's when you will realize the layout wasn't created for modern typing. It came from early mechanical typewriters in the late 19th century. These machines didn't use electronic inputs. Each key was connected to a metal arm. When you pressed a letter, that arm would swing up and strike an ink ribbon against paper. It was a physical system, and that created a very specific problem. If two nearby keys were pressed in quick succession, their metal arms could collide and jam together. The faster someone typed, the more likely it was to happen. So the issue wasn't how to make typing faster, it was how to keep the machine from breaking when people typed quickly. That's where Christopher Latham Scholes comes in. He was one of the inventors working on early typewriter designs. And instead of arranging letters alphabetically, he began spacing out commonly used letter combinations. Pairs like TH or ER were separated to reduce the chance of those mechanical arms colliding. The result was a layout that deliberately slowed certain sequences down, just enough to prevent jams. It wasn't random, it was engineered for a mechanical limitation. But technology evolved, and so did the typewriters. Mechanical systems were replaced by electric ones, and eventually by digital keyboards. The original limitation that shaped the layout started to fade, and now designers finally had the freedom to rethink the keyboard. No more metal arms, no more jamming. The original problem was gone, so a new question started to emerge. If we were starting from scratch, would we design the keyboard the same way? The answer was no. One of the most well-known alternatives is the Dvorak keyboard layout. It was designed with a completely different goal in mind. Instead of working around mechanical constraints, it focused on human efficiency. The most frequently used letters were placed on the home row, reducing finger movement and making typing feel smoother and more balanced. Later, another layout called the Colmack keyboard layout took a similar approach. It aimed to improve efficiency while keeping some familiarity with the standard layout, making the transition easier. On paper, these designs make a lot of sense. They reduce strain, they can increase speed, and they align more closely with how people actually type. But here's where things take a different turn. Even with those advantages, they never replaced the standard layout. Not because they didn't work, but because switching came at a cost. People would have to relearn how to type. Workplaces would have to retrain employees. Systems built around the existing layout would need to change. And most people didn't see enough benefit to justify that effort. At this point, it starts to look like the keyboard survived purely because of history. But there's another layer that makes it even harder to change, and it has nothing to do with the layout itself. When you're using a keyboard, you're not consciously searching for each letter. You're not thinking, where is T? Where is H? That would be far too slow. Instead, your brain stores patterns of movement, sequences of finger actions that get executed automatically. Over time, those patterns become deeply ingrained. The moment you think of a word, your fingers already know where to go. It's not about remembering keys, it's about recalling motion. This is what we call muscle memory. And once that system is built, changing the layout doesn't just feel unfamiliar, it feels like starting over. The same words you've typed thousands of times suddenly require effort again. Your speed drops, your accuracy drops, and something that once felt automatic becomes deliberate. There's also a subtle psychological layer to this. Certain words and letter combinations feel easier simply because your fingers are used to them. The layout begins to shape what feels natural to type, even if it wasn't designed for that purpose. So even if a more efficient layout exists, the barrier will now be rewiring a system your brain has already optimized over years of repetition. Quite interesting, right? Now to you, how many things do you think we use every day, not because they're the best, but simply because we're used to them? Comment down below and subscribe for more.